Welcome into Betting the Pitch number 204 with the real underscore G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, though TikTok doesn't seem to want to let me edit my profile. So that might be a quick experiment and a retirement very fast. This is the last real big day of the sporting season, and we still have some stuff coming up like La Liga promotion playoffs plus relegation playoff in Serie A tomorrow. But the big daddy is here, big person maybe in this day and age, culture wise, with the Champions League final, and it starts in a couple hours. So figured I'd go through some day of materials. Might be a little bit more all over the place than most episodes. Want to shout out my Patreon subscribers. Thank you for being there. Patreon.com/thereal_G Warner. Had a real nice baseball day yesterday, so you can get there. It's a much more affordable than any pregame subscription. Certainly appreciate and respect and thankful to all my supporters there as well. But I suggest checking out Patreon. It might be new to you, but it's a place where you can get all of my thoughts in a single place. I put my leans out every night and then really go out throughout the day, give my updates on what I like, what I got scared away from, and things of that nature. But and also had given out a play on this matchup that we'll get to in a second. And so I'll kind of speak through kind of where I was thinking then and then kind of where we're at now. But I guess I might as well go into it. All lines quoted in this podcast are courtesy of betonline.ag, my favorite place to get my bets down early. Reduced juice is offered on almost every game you want to bet right up until game time. Please follow the link found in the podcast description to fund your account. Use the promo code GW50 to receive a 50% match bonus up to $1,000. I don't have a pregame.com promo code, so of course, check out. Got picks coming out there. Highly recommend checking out Patreon though if you're a pregame subscriber. It might be worth your while. And so I guess I'll get into this matchup today. Don't have lineups yet. Those are probably not coming for another hour and change. So I figured I might do some speculation on this podcast to try to get an idea of kind of what is likely to be seen and maybe any line movement that's occurred or will occur. I made this number, just speaking of the spread, I made it to a 1-goal underdog. It looks like they've dropped down to that number. Initially, when I started tracking this, we had a 1.25 at pretty much -110, split both ways juice. It then it got pretty juiced up to -123 on the 1.25 line, then dropped to 1, went back up to a very juiced 1.25, dropped to 1 here seemingly overnight. And I've noticed the total has dropped also from 2.75 down to 2.5, getting odds. So there's a fair amount of odds being offered on this matchup. So clearly the books are trying to get money on one side, try to balance a little bit, but that tells me a fair amount of Inter money has come in. You'd expect most of the time that this would build up towards the end and Man City would be catching a lot of money into the last few minutes before kickoff. But considering Inter are such a big underdog, this is a really obviously the biggest match of the season for any club that's playing in European soccer. And I got to say, it's interesting to me that Inter money has been hitting and that there's been a lot of belief in this underdog from Serie A, which, I mean, they were putting out all these promotional type of videos saying calcio is back, soccer is back, is what they call it in Italian. And then they lost both of the Conference League and Europa League finals so far. I thought Fiorentina outplayed West Ham, but didn't win. Roma had a lead and then couldn't hold on, and then the shenanigans afterwards. But I do think that this matchup is a little bit different, though, because those were pick'ems and quarter goal favorites, or I think we're both pick'ems actually, now that I think about it. Whereas this matchup, Man City is clearly the best team in the world, and they are favored to win, not only to win this match in regulation, but to win by multiple goals, essentially is what this number's saying. I took the 1.25 earlier this week because I thought that it might not stick around for too long, and I felt like a single goal victory for Manchester City probably would be a fair result based on the expectations for these two sides, but that we weren't sure really that number would stick. I'm glad I took it then because it's approximately 18 cents more expensive right now. You get a 1.25 on BetOnline with one of the alternate numbers at -138. I wouldn't advise chasing that number up to that. It's possible we get some movement and get a better price on Inter with some Man City money hitting over the next couple hours, but I certainly wouldn't also say it's a bad idea to take a +1 and take odds on it and maybe Inter win or draw in regulation. I think there's a good chance though that Inter, I mean, we've seen also the number to lift the trophy has dropped quite a bit, all the way down from -450 is where Manchester City started, climbed up to -500 or 1-5, dropped all the way down now to -410 as of my last refresh. Inter started at +325, climbed all the way up to 375, excuse me, and then came all the way back down to 325 numbers. So Man City's, I guess, taking a little less money also to lift the trophy. I mean, you'd expect that with such big odds that people will take the underdog. But neutral site, Inter, I think are really set up to play pretty well against Man City. I guess I might as well go into what I'm expecting from this matchup, and then I'll run through some props as well, because I mean, why the heck not? It's a Super Bowl type of Saturday here in Istanbul, I believe is where we are. So I don't know if that matters too much, but Hakan Çalhanoğlu will be playing for Inter. That's probably a good sign for getting some crowd support. İlkay Gündoğan, who's a German Turk, but is certainly part of the big Turkish culture in Germany. He's probably going to get some respect there too. Don't want to forget that. But when I look at lineups, I'm looking most closely at Coppa Italia's final against Fiorentina for Inter, and also the FA Cup final that just was played for Man City, their last match. Inter's were a few matches ago, and it's been a little while since they played their best hand, I would say. I'll start with the underdog and the side that I like. I would expect Onana will start at goalkeeper instead of Handanovic, but the lineup's probably going to be pretty similar. There's debate whether Dzeko or Romelu Lukaku start at the striker position next to Lautaro Martinez. Martinez is really, really fickle, and it's hard to predict, but when he's going well, which he has been, he's one of the more scary attackers, I think, in all of European football, all of world football, honestly. He showed it for Argentina, playing a ton of minutes in the World Cup. And really the way, I guess I'll get into the tactics of where I expect this match to go. But that's a debate, whether you want to bring in Lukaku against potentially a little bit more tired of a City defense, or to start him initially because he's more of a ball holding threat, I think, than Dzeko. Though both are probably going to play that type of role. But again, I'll get to tactics in a second. Imagine DeMarco starts, and then we'll get substituted at some point for Gosens. Dumfries will probably be out there the whole time, and he's got some pace to start some counterattacks. Nico Borella, who was rested for a lot of the last match of the season. I think Brozovic will come in instead of Mkhitaryan, because I think they know that they need a little bit more defense in the middle. And Brozovic is part of the reason why Croatia were so good and have really got a third place in the World Cup, second place in a World Cup before that. And I think have really outperformed expectations because they're a great midfield. Of course, Luka Modric gets all the credit, but I think Brozovic is another good player that deserves some of it as well. As I mentioned, Çalhanoğlu being Turkish, that probably might be an impacting factor. I mean, there's probably a lot of neutrals at this matchup. So anyway, so I'm not really sure it matters too much, but I think you're pretty much rooting for City if you're a City fan, or you're rooting against them if you're not. So like maybe some Juventus people bought tickets, but I doubt it. So I feel like it's pretty much, if you're not a City fan, you're rooting for Inter in that crowd. And I think that's going to help. As for the Man City side, so both of these teams played their backup goalkeepers in the cup competitions, which I think is reasonable because that's what they did the whole time, and both of them won, so clearly it worked. But Ederson will come in at goalkeeper, and then I think Walker, Dias, Akanji. Maybe Akanji is switched out with Ake, but I don't think you mess with if it ain't broke, don't fix it is probably Pep's strategy. I was going to say something in Spanish, but I don't want to think about it really quickly and make it terrible. And that's not what anyone's here for. John Stone's probably still in the center defensive midfielder type position, similar to Rodri, which is still a pretty defensive back line for Man City. And I'll get to tactics in a second, but I have some thoughts on that. Bernardo Silva is certainly going to be in there. He's been awesome, as well as De Bruyne for as long as he can be. Gundogan, and then either Grealish or Foden, but Grealish probably starts. And I don't know if that's necessarily a big switch off, but I do think that similar to Lukaku coming in potentially off the bench against some tired legs, that might be what we see with Phil Foden coming in. And then Erling Haaland up top, of course. There's been talks strategy-wise that Acerbi will be doing a kind of man-to-man with Haaland, which will leave the other two center backs kind of exposed because they're kind of wing center backs, if you will. Or at least left and right sided. I don't know necessarily that that's the strategy that will be employed. I think it's very likely that Inter, who haven't sat as deep this season, but I still think ultimately are a counterattacking side, and that's what they want to do. So I expect them to be a lot more sunk deep in their end, and that's the game that City are going to play anyway. So while Inter are one of the best clubs in Serie A, didn't win the Scudetto this season, they're certainly not as used to defending wholeheartedly the whole time, but they did it in a lot of their Champions League run to get to this point. Had good success with it against their city rivals in the semifinals with AC Milan. Plus, they did it to the Portuguese sides they played when they took a lead. They went in defense mode and really strangled the games and made it really hard for the other team to come back from a deficit. I think that's the strategy here. Inter try to take a 1-0 lead and then hold on to dear life. I think that would be a great scenario. Not so much for, I think, the under if Inter take a lead, but certainly for the side. That's what I'm hoping for, is not necessarily an early goal, but I'll take it anytime, really. I think if Inter get on the board, especially an over-under of 2.5 right now, juiced pretty much all to the over, but even then, I don't think it's hitting 3 or 4 kickoffs. So not a lot of goals are expected. It's probably one of the lower totals that Man City have seen in a while. But I think it's understandable, kind of deserved based on what's at stake here, and especially because this is a legacy-defining moment for the club. They closed 2.5 against Manchester United in the FA Cup, but that's in England, a little bit different of a scenario. But I think that's where I'm currently interested in projecting, I guess, is that Man City they're going to be on the front foot. They're going to have a lot of possession, but Inter are comfortable with that. It's going back to Conte when they won the Scudetto 3 seasons ago. That's exactly how they played, the same way that Conte employed at Tottenham Hotspur until he lost his job this year. Inzaghi is not that same type of manager, but ultimately he's taken the reins from where Antonio Conte left off, and it's worked really well. They should have won the Scudetto last year. They won the Coppa Italia this year. They made the Champions League final. So it's hard to poke a lot of holes in what Inzaghi had done, despite being on the chopping block for a lot of this season. Nothing you can argue with about Man City and how they've performed, and they've been so hot lately. But ultimately, this is one of the bigger opponents they've faced, and they're not at home. Where I think honestly they looked pretty average for a lot of the match with Real Madrid in the Bernabeu on the road. It's certainly not a road match for them either, but it's not the same dominant Etihad type of performance that I think will be expected. I also think there's a lot of pressure on Man City, that every minute or even really every second that they don't take the lead, they get a little bit more stressed about, oh my God, is this really going to happen? Why have we struggled so much? Certainly an early goal for Man City would be really, really disastrous for an Inter Milan bet. Definitely also for an over-under. But I think what that will do is probably give Man City a lot more confidence. And I think Inter are going to do their best to try to keep Man City from scoring as long as possible. Of course, they want to score themselves, but I think their real focus is defense. And I think that matters with a +1.25 that was available earlier this week. It might come back again, like I said, but I'm interested in a +1.25. If it does come back, I would have still played a +1 if you're looking at it and do want to play something on this matchup. I think there's a fairly good chance you push and get your money back, but then you're watching the UEFA Champions League final. It's essentially like a free movie. So not too bad. Maybe buy some popcorn, some beers, whatever you're doing, whatever you're into. But it all seems pretty cool to me that it would be a really good time. And ultimately, I think it's now probably time for me to get into some props, because I've pretty much said exactly what I think will happen. But maybe we'll get into a little bit more specific things. So looking at goal scorers, because I feel like that's something to at least talk about. Erling Haaland, and using Bet Online for these numbers as always. Erling Haaland favored to score a goal, -143, should be on penalties. It's interesting to see Julian Alvarez as the second most likely to score, even though he's probably not going to see the pitch until like the 80th minute or at all. Maybe if they're losing, but he's only +160 to score, which does not feel good enough for me. Riyad Mahrez, who hasn't really started in a while, +275, and then Foden +250. These numbers are kind of all over the place, with De Bruyne at 275. De Bruyne will probably be taking the set pieces, to say the least, but and they're all City players until we get to the first Inter player, which is Lautaro Martinez at +325. Looks like some money has come in on Foden to score a goal, because he's kind of flip-flopped with Mahrez on terms of the third most likely scorer on Man City. And I don't necessarily know why, because I doubt he's going to start here. It'd be kind of a big surprise if he was the selection over Grealish. I mean, Man City are so strong in every place that they have like a 1A and 1B at almost every spot on the pitch. And that's why they won Premier League, because Arsenal had a bunch of injuries and couldn't really sustain their level. And Man City are just a mine shaft, essentially. They're just a team and a machine, really. When I look at Lautaro, I mean, he's a really good chance to score. I think he'll be on penalties for Inter, and Lukaku has shown a really great partnership, especially setting up Lautaro Martinez, because there's not a lot of speed. And I guess when I speak tactically, we expect that Inter will sit deep, but they will try to spring counterattacks as quickly as possible. The problem is they don't have a lot of pace up front to really cause a lot of problems. Of course, running at anybody, you don't have to have the speed of a Colomwani or an Osimhen or anything like that across world football. Just having a 3-on-2, 3-on-3 is a really good setup for Inter, and probably is their best chance to score. I think Denzel Dumfries on the right side is probably their best option to really their best sprinter to outpace the City wing, but and especially because he'll be up against Jack Grealish, who will not be defending, or Phil Foden, whoever it is, won't be. At least they're not defenders; they're not built to do that. So I'm like trying not to be as optimistic for Inter as I have been, but I do feel like there's some trouble in the waters coming, for troubled waters for Man City here. Red sky at night, sailor delight, whatever the opposite is, looks dangerous. And I don't think this will be as straightforward as the City media, and like literally not the City media, but like all of the ESPN FC people are like shouting out dominant wins for Man City, and I just don't really think that's going to happen. Yes, I'm an underdog player by nature across all sports, but I think there's a really good chance that this is a lot closer to a toss-up than people are talking about. Anyway, so beside Lautaro at plus 325, then Grealish, then Bernardo Silva. Bernardo Silva at plus 450 seems like a decent shout. He seems to find himself scoring goals all the time, and usually when he does, they're in blowouts. And so I'm really hoping, of all people to score, I think Haaland would make the most sense and should be favored probably for Man City and on being on penalty kicks. But I think in terms of like a momentum changing goal scorer, that would be Bernardo Silva in my humble opinion. We got Lukaku at 350, Dzeko 4-1. Question about who starts there. That number kind of indicates that Lukaku would start, but I guess it doesn't guarantee that. And certainly if you're playing one of them with only a 4-1 odds on scoring a goal, you'd want them to start. And it's going to be hard to say if that's going to happen. Of course, we'll have lineups in an hour, so that'll be easy enough to then predict, because they'll come out and they'll tell us exactly what it'll look like on Twitter. Other players maybe to shout about potentially, I mean, they are long shots, but Federico Di Marco, left wing back for Inter Milan, finds his way in the box and seemed like one of the most important players for Inter this season, which is surprising. I don't think anyone expected that, really. But 11-1 to score. It's a long shot, probably not long enough, but feels like one. And then in terms of others potentially scoring, I don't know, that like Dumfries at 12-1, he'll potentially be a threat, but I think he'll be crossing or passing into the box rather than shooting. And that's probably all I want to do. Going to cards now. That's interesting to me. The favorite is Denzel Dumfries. Oh no, excuse me. Çalhanoğlu at 2-1 is the favorite, I guess, to get a yellow card. Tied with Brozovic. I think those are probably two. Well, I keep getting corrected. Nicola Barella plus 175. So that's less than 2-1 odds that Barella gets a card. He's certainly emotional, might get one from talking, but I think any of those central defenders for Inter who are going to start are probably decent shouts to get a card of some sort. I don't necessarily know that. I mean, in Champions League, in the final, I expect this to be probably a German referee. I hope it's going to be Siebert or Dr. Felix Britsch rather than a La Liga ref. We saw them do, and I guess get out relatively unscathed from the Conference League final earlier in the week. But would be really nice if we could leave La Liga officials out of this, so I can have as much time without thinking about them as possible in the off season. In terms of, I guess, cards that I'm interested in, I mean, it all makes sense. I think I also feel like sneakily, since City just interrupt counterattacks and take tactical fouls with yellows, I think Bernardo Silva plus 275 is a decent shout. They're not huge numbers, unfortunately, here, but that's something that I could see happening. All numbers are on Bet Online in the prop section if that's something you're looking for. And I realize props are fairly low type of volume value for a lot of people, because if you're betting big money, there's probably not a lot of space for you to get what you're looking for down unless you're spreading it across multiple books and multiple prices, yada, yada, yada. But I also figured, since this is basically the Super Bowl of European football, that I might as well go through in a little bit more depth. Score or assist numbers. So I think that would add a little bit more to potentially not having to actually find the net, but being involved in it. Who knows with box scorers and things like that of who grades what as an assist, but I don't think it's a shot on goal that's saved like they score in FPL. But Erling Haaland jumps to -167, De Bruyne -112. So of course the favorite getting a lot of respect there. Julian Alvarez at +129, though he's a similar number to score a goal. It doesn't seem like that makes a ton of sense to me. Currently with Alvarez +160 to score and +129 to score or assist. I mean, not bad. Mahrez at +129 seems really unreasonable especially if he's not going to start. Grealish and Foden are tied again. So this feels like no one has any idea who's starting, which I don't blame them, because it's hard to tell. And Pep clearly does a lot of things. Something to always think about is Pep getting a little bit nervous or trying to change things, which Bernardo Silva said that what makes him so good, but sometimes it doesn't work. And in Champions League finals, you'd think you'd want to stick with what works rather than trying to surprise your opponent. But if you got a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, excuse the baseball reference because it's a different sport, but I would hope, like last night with Duran, I believe, for the Twins, when he had 102 that he could throw, or 104, I think his max velocity, throwing a curveball back up into like on a 1-2 count and hitting a batter seventh in the lineup for the Jays. It's not really a great strategy. So I would use the fastball here if I'm Pep, but we'll see. In terms of other, I guess, potential options for that 2 score or assist number, basically goal contribution, I think you'd probably call it Gundogan at +179. Doesn't feel like a lot for a midfielder. Bernardo Silva +225 is probably what I would like. Lautaro +250. I feel like that's a good chance for Inter. I think he's most likely. I mean, not the worst thing in the world. Plus, I mean, it's not a huge ask, but ultimately, I mean, it's like a 20. I guess at +250, you need to hit Lautaro Martinez to score or assist like 30% of the time to break even. So we're gonna make it a plus EV bet. If you're into entertainment, sure. I mean, I don't blame you for that either. So I guess I should probably highlight some of these that make a little bit more sense. I guess also some head-to-head numbers I'm now seeing. Is there anything interesting here? Looks like shots on goal. You can take Lautaro Martinez against Julian Alvarez. I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because Lautaro should be shooting, won't have a lot of chances, I would suspect, but Alvarez might have none and might not play much. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It might be must start rules here or something like that I'm not seeing. I don't think I'd want to do shots on goal versus Haaland, though he's a favorite to everyone, I'm assuming. Most shots, I mean, Lautaro, I feel like might not get shots on target, but should have more than Julian Alvarez, and he's an underdog on both sets there. That's interesting to me. So I guess I'll highlight those. I don't know if this is the best bets portion of the show, as I've kind of already given out my play, but if you're, I guess I should probably do one of those, because my plan was to put this onto TikTok, and they haven't let me change my account picture because they say I'm editing my account too much. If anyone knows how to solve that, I'll forever be in your debt. But I'm not really expecting a lot, because TikTok is not really my cup of tea, I'll admit. So I'll just do it that way, I guess. I mean, I guess I'll sum up here. I don't know how much, I'm kind of just rambling, went through the props. I guess I'll sum up the props from bottom to top. You might have just heard this, but forgive me. I'm interested in Lautaro Martinez at plus money against Julian Alvarez, both shots and shots on goal. Curious if that'll stick around after the starting lineups are announced, but maybe, I mean, I would expect they wouldn't be seeing Julian Alvarez in that lineup, so it probably should be there. In terms of score or assist, I'm interested in Lautaro Martinez plus 250, also in Bernardo Silva plus 225. I do think that it's probably not worth to speculate on a bunch because I think it's going to be a low scoring matchup, but obviously the more goals, better chances for those are. I mean, cards, you got all the Inter midfielders, pretty good chance there. I think Bernardo Silva also plus 275 is interesting. I mean, I don't know what scenario Inter are not taking cards, especially if they have a lead or are trailing and they're frustrated. I mean, you can see Brozovic with a bomb tattoo on his neck. I mean, that's certainly some experience there with taking cards with him in his career. When I look at goals, of course, Erling Haaland, but as a favorite, I'm not interested in that. They're probably doing their best in Inter will to try to shut that supply line off as much as possible. Let's see. I don't know, like Foden, I don't believe in. I mean, Lautaro plus 325. I mean, as you get higher and higher and the numbers get longer and longer, I mean, you only need 24% of the time if Lautaro scores a goal, then you're plus EV at plus 325. I mean, not a bad number, but still not gigantic and also tough for a team that's going to defend a lot of the match. And that's probably ends of my prop thing. I'm more of a side and total player, as I think everyone knows who listens to this, and thank you for the support. If you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe. I'll sum this all up and I'm going to do a little quick hit so I can kind of put this on the other socials. But if you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. Got any tips? Like this episode? Tell me. It's different than the rest, but I'm still going to be doing episodes for the international windows, and probably one future episode a week is probably what I'll keep doing for pregame. So if you're on that feed, stay there as well. You'll see some more. And then, yeah, I guess that's what we got here. So I'll sum it up now. Hey, this is the real_G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. This is the Champions League final, and I played Inter Milan plus 1.25 earlier this week. I still like the +1 right now. It's a little bit different of a scenario, but you might push at a full game, single goal loss by Inter. I still think there's a good chance that they hang around and potentially draw or even win. So that +1 will look great in either of those scenarios. Inter are no strangers to defending. I think they're more used to it and their setup kind of applies pretty well for it. Whereas Man City are going to be in a tough, treacherous situation where they have all the pressure. They're expected to win by everyone. I don't think it's going to be as lopsided as everyone, including the betting markets, think. I also love seeing the respect that Inter Milan have gotten the last few days. Numbers have gotten lower as opposed to the favorite Man City getting bet more. So I took Inter plus 1.25. I'll take that +1 today on that game line as well, as I think they hang around and make this a tight one. And I'll do it for this episode. Stay tuned for, I guess, lineups and what other stuff is going to come out. Of course, always appreciate the support, especially on a match day. And stay tuned. I'm not sure if I'll get something together for the Serie A playoff tomorrow. Also, I think the La Liga promotion playoff, that's on my list. But I'll look into it, see if I can come up with something that might be useful to you all. Of course, any feedback, more than accepted, really would be appreciated / wanted. And if there's anything more I can do, shout. The real_G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, wherever you can find me. Slide in some DMs and I'll get back to you.